you guys there? What's going on? Am I in the upside down or are you? Sorry, I couldn't resist doing that. Let's fix it. Oh, and hopefully I don't turn my phone off. All right, I'll try to do this as slowly as possible so I don't make anyone dizzy. And hang on, because I got to pin a comment. Stranger Things. That is not capital. Spoiler alert. All right, we're posting that. Let me pin my comment. And while I'm doing that, let me tell you, if I could figure out how the heck to pin my comment. I thought I had this down. Really, Miranda? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're going to let that go. Let me put you right side up. Okay, hi. Thank you for putting up with my silly intro. And FYI, if you don't know, we're talking all things Stranger Things Season 4. Lots and lots and lots of spoilers ahead. So if you have not watched Part 4, get the heck out of here. Adding in our guest for this evening. Thanks for popping in, Chelsea. Is he there? There he is.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
oh,
Mike.
It's cutting me off. I guess I needed to be a little higher with my camera.
I know. I finally adjusted mine down so I fill up more of the screen. I feel like it's always like my head and that's it.
Well, see, that was my concern, and that's why I went down. But I apparently...
We're rusty at this Instagram Live thing. It's been a while since we've done this, huh?
Well, see, that's why Instagram needs to give you something to help test your height and your placement. But
I did just, it might help. I did just discover, this is not interesting to anybody who doesn't do Instagram Lives, but I did just discover that you can do practice Instagram Lives with just yourself, because I keep popping over to my personal account and testing things, so.
Oh, that's what I was doing before this, and it worked, but because you're on the screen now, it changes it. Oh, there we go. That's a little better.
I ruin everything. We already know this.
That's all right. It's the interwebs. The interwebs ruins all the things.
So, well, for those of you who are watching and joining us live tonight, Mike and I are going to talk about the entire new season of Stranger Things. I am so excited about this. So, seriously, if you have not watched it, if you have not finished it, we are going to talk everything beginning to end, spoil stuff right and left. So, get out of here, because we don't want to do that to you if you don't want to be spoiled. Disclaimer. And I'll keep saying that, like, periodically, too. So, Mike, for anybody who doesn't know you, do you want to give a quick intro and tell everybody what you do around the internet?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I am Mike. I go online as All Hallows Geek, as you can see here. I run the website allhallowsgeek.com, which basically is your go-to news source for all things Halloween and horror news, 24/7, 365, covering all things kind of spooky pop culture. So comic books to movies to video games to television, you name it, I'm writing about it.
And that is exactly why I wanted Mike to do this Instagram Live with me. I was thinking about all the spooky friends that I could have had on tonight, but Mike is the one who always keeps me up to date on Stranger Things stuff, for lack of a better term at the moment. So
there's a lot of it.
There is a lot of it, and you have done a killer job of keeping up with it all. So kudos to you. Good work. Thank you for keeping all of us Stranger Things nerds in the loop.
I do my best, but it has been hard. I feel like every time I think I've seen it all, something else comes along. So
I keep resisting the urge to text you or like DM you and be like, "Did you see this? Did you see that?" Because I know I'm just like gonna end up being
do it
because you've already seen
do it. People do it to me all the time, and that's okay. I'd rather see it, 2 or 3 times than miss out on the opportunity to something cool.
Same, honestly, same. Okay, so Mike and I kind of went through, we made a massive list. I have a whole front and like half a back of page of stuff that we want to chat about. So go get a drink and settle in, because this is we're probably gonna hang out for a while, like an hour, I'm gonna say, maybe a little longer. Before we do that though, since we're talking about like all the tie-ins that have happened, all the products and stuff that have released this year, do you have a favorite thing that you've run across? And I know you got to try the Surfer Boy pizza, so I'd be curious to hear how those are too.
Sure. Well, and actually just today, funny enough, I found another one of the tie-ins which I've been looking for, which is the Sour Patch Kids.
Shut up.
I hadn't seen them yet.
I'll be back. I gotta go.
I think my favorite so far, oh God, that's tough. My favorite so far is probably, and this was the weirdest one, the veggie chicken nuggets.
So
it is the most random one, and I've gone back and bought them at Walmart more than once. And the reason being is it's like, I don't know if you've had veggie nuggets in the past, but like they tend to just have like that typical breading and things like that. But this almost has like a country kind of breading on it. So they don't taste like any of the other veggie nuggets you get. So it's like the breading they have on like country fried steak or fried chicken or something like country fried chicken. So they're just totally different than most of the veggie nuggets you get, and they're actually really good, like for not being chicken. So that one surprised me, and I've gone back to it more than once. So that's probably my favorite. You mentioned the pizzas, and yeah, I mean they're frozen pizza. They were good enough for a frozen pizza, but I mean the boxes were cool. I kept all 4 boxes, and those sold out quick. So my Walmart had a full stocked freezer like a week ago, and we went the other day, gone. So people finally watched some Stranger Things and bought up some pizza.
Oh yeah, it was all gone. I mean, where I am, I don't have a ton of Walmarts immediately by me, and I think that was the only place to get those too. But I went actually.
Yeah.
I stupidly waited until the morning of the show releasing, and just popped into Walmart for a couple other things, and just swung through the frozen pizza aisle just to look, and nothing. The chicken nuggets were nothing. So.
I got plenty of those, so apparently where I live, nobody wants to eat veggie nuggets. So I'm probably going to buy more this week when I go back.
Apparently it's just me, because everybody else, like all my other friends seem to be finding them. So like I know Midge found a whole bunch of stuff in Kansas City, one of my friends in Oklahoma City, all the cities. They have them all there, just not in Houston.
Yeah. I think the only other thing that I've been looking for that I haven't got yet, and I don't even know if it's been released yet, is Target is coming out with the 11 in the Rainbow Room Funko Pop. It's a deluxe one where she's actually in the room, and it's the scene, that scene.
Yeah.
I'm not spoiling it yet. And that's supposed to be coming out. Like they announced that even pre-Funkoween, but I have yet to see it on Target's website or in a Target store. But I really, really want that pop.
I will keep an eye out for that for you. I'm sure you'll find it, because you find everything.
There's a fun tie-in. It's not my favorite. The fun tie-in, if you've seen it, is the Energizer flashlight. That one's kind of cool. And I wish I had it out, but I don't. But it's got like stuff you can decode in Morse code all around it. It says it has like the Hawkins National Laboratory like etched into it. And there's actually a hidden message inside it that you have to find to L. I mean, it's nothing cool, sexy or exciting, but it's just fun.
That's really cool. I love that. Well, I did see a question go by. Somebody asked if we're going to go episode by episode with what we're chatting about tonight. We are not. Honestly, we could probably sit here and like fill the runtime for each episode talking about every single one. So, but we do have kind of some big picture things that we want to talk about. A couple things we want to clear up. Common questions that the two of us keep seeing that we know the answers to, or somewhat know the answers to, as Stranger Things nerds ourselves, and then a couple of details within the episodes that we want to talk about, and then predictions for what we're going to get in volume 2. So should we get into it?
Yeah, dive into it.
All right. Yeah, seriously, if you have not finished, now's the time to leave. It is not our fault if we spoil something for you. You have been warned. All right, so first I have to ask this, because I have a very specific method, and this is not one of the questions that I put on our list, so I'm sorry for like going right out the gate with a question that I didn't prep you for.
I'm like, goodbye. No, I'm just kidding.
Fair. How do you watch the series? And bonus question, do you watch the intro every episode, or do you skip it? Because you're a monster.
I skip. Okay, so I'll start with that. I skip it.
Mike. Okay, bye.
I mean, so I skip the intro. In terms of how I watch it, I've historically binged it, and this time I had to break up my binging sections a bit. But yeah, I mean, I binge, and I've now binged it twice, but I'm a binger. Although I do kind of, to kind of go on a little tangent here, I kind of wish they didn't make it so that we could binge it. I know like we live in the age of binging, but I feel like the excitement and anticipation if we got one of these each week would have, I know this is a long season, but I think that would have been fun, especially as we're kind of counting things down to the end. So maybe they'll do that with 5, and then we'll hate them for it because we'll just want to know what happens. But
I agree. And honestly, I find, so part of why I asked this is because I have a very specific watch method that I developed back in 2016 when the revival of Gilmore Girls came out, because I had waited so long for the creators ending, and I didn't want to just blow through like the whole 6 hours that it is. So I've kind of adapted that with, like, I was doing this with Sabrina, and now I've done it with Stranger Things twice. But what I did is I watched the first 2 episodes on Friday, and then I rewatched both of them, and then I waited till Saturday. I honestly like put off watching for as long as I could stand it during the day because I didn't want to like dive in and just blow through the rest of it. So I ended up watching 3, 4, and 5, and then rewatched all 3 of those to fill the day. And
Oh,
then on
wow.
Sunday, intended to watch 6 and 7, but what I did was start with 1, rewatched everything up till 6, watched 6, and then decided I didn't have enough time to watch all of 7 because it was too late in the day. So I rewatched 6 the second time, and then I watched 7 3 times on Monday.
Yeah.
So like I paced myself that way because the thing is, I find too, especially with this show, you miss so much if you just blow through it all at once. Like you really have to go back and watch and rewatch a couple of times to catch everything that's in there.
For sure. Yeah, I think I still struggle from FOMO, especially with something like Stranger Things. So I was like, no, I got to finish this. But you're right. I mean, there are so many little details in that show that, like, even I'm sure on my second, viewing, I probably still haven't seen everything that's probably happening in the background. And that's kind of what I did on my second viewing is I actually went out and kind of like focused on the backgrounds of scenes more so than what the characters were doing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what I do too. So we'll get into a little bit more on details later on. But just love to hear kind of your overall impressions of this season, how you think we've kind of transitioned from the previous seasons into this one. If you have a favorite moment or scene or storyline from this season, and if there was anything that you didn't like either.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I liked this season, and I was curious to know how it was going to go, considering everybody's split up. You've got multiple storylines going on. I was like, is this going to get ugly? Is this going to get sloppy? Are we going to be jumping all over the place and not be able to track this? But I think they really handled it well. I felt the way that they chunked each kind of block of the story, you felt like, okay, whatever happened in this episode that was happening to the California crew, like that would more or less kind of conclude at least what you needed in that moment. And then they'd move on to Russia, or they'd move on to Hawkins, or wherever it was that something was going on. And they did a really good job of that. So I've liked it. I think they did that well. I think showing kind of the growth of these characters and the maturing of these characters. I mean, they're a lot older now. I just think they did a really good job
with
everything. Yeah. I mean, I think they handled all of that really well. So I've really liked this season. This is definitely my favorite season so far. I mean, we'll see, but so far. Yeah.
I'm still, season 3 is my favorite. I think because that's the season where I just absolutely fell in love with David Harbour. Like, I think I'm just always going to have a soft spot for that because he was so damn good in that season. He's amazing in this season too. But I do like this season though, because it's like it went so much darker, and we kind of got the change into like, okay, here's like the meat of the story, and like we're starting to learn like this isn't just some weird like freak occurrence where Will just went missing for a week and suddenly popped back up. Like there's some serious stuff going down, and we're finally digging into the specifics of it. So I'm really excited about that and to keep learning more kind of about what's going on and where we're going to end this season, or story, I should say, the whole series.
Yeah, no, agree. I mean, I feel like they're starting to tie up some of those loose ends from the past seasons where it kind of just feels like these one-off moments of like, okay, that happened again, but now it's all coming full circle. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Did you have a favorite storyline, favorite scene, favorite episode from this season?
Oh, geez. I don't know if I have a favorite storyline. Yeah, no. I'll give you my 2 favorites. So I will say, like, my favorite moment is in the new season was probably when they go to Susie's house. That entire moment of them going to Susie's house, the chaos that's there, like, when you meet Susie, she's like this perfect little girl, and she's goody, like to the nth degree, and then you get there and she lives in utter chaos. There was just something so magical about that, especially with her little brother with the bow and arrow, and the sisters being killed. Like, just that whole experience, I loved that.
I love that she has an older goth sister who curses.
Yes,
I'm like, that's that's me. Hi, Eden and I can be best friends.
Yeah, and then I think my favorite episode has to be episode 4, not just because Robert Englund's in it, but for me, that whole episode is really about Max, who's so young, coming to terms with like, I might die. And that was such a deep and heavy subject, but like she handled it. Like she wrote all those letters. Like that's crazy to me. Like to have a young kid to basically say like, look, we're trying to stop this, but there's a chance tomorrow I won't be here. So let me tie up all the loose ends with these people in my life. And that was, I mean, that was kind of mind blowing. Like it was a very heavy episode from that standpoint, but I mean, it was a powerful episode. I don't know. I just dug everything about that episode.
I agree. I think that's honestly my favorite episode of the entire series. And like, I absolutely fell in love with Max this season.
Yeah.
I've really loved watching her character grow. But yeah, I think, I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way where she's what, 14, 15 years old, coming to terms with, you know, I might die. And that's, I mean, I don't know that I could do that at 38. So that's like, yeah, that is a really huge thing. But just, I don't know, I just love, like, I really love the strong female characters in Stranger Things. And I don't think I realized that it's always the women in this series that are like stepping in and kind of saving the day, whether it's something little like calling Susie last season to, because, oh shit, we forgot the code to, you know, break into the Russian lab, or, you know, this season where, you know, it's Joyce rushing off to rescue Hopper in Russia, or, you know,
right.
I mean, like, oh my gosh, even Erica, God, I'm thinking of all their real names right now. So I'm like, wait, what's the character name? Even Erica towards the end, like there's something in that, I think the 6th episode, where they're in the kitchen after the kids like get arrested, caught by the cops. Yeah. And Erica says something and it completely sparks Dustin, but it's like, it's Erica saying the thing and like helping put the puzzle pieces together. I'm just,
well, hell, and even Erica, Erica's even the one that bailed them out during Hellfire Club.
True.
Like even at that moment, like she had the winning role. Like she was the one that's like, no, we're not going to cop out. Come on.
Oh my God. Yes. Kate or Robin and Nancy going to Penhurst and just stepping in like into this very adult situation and just completely owning it and taking charge and not being terrified to get walked into this basement, you know, cell block basically to talk to Victor. Like, yeah, I just,
that whole scene with Robin when she's talking to the like psychology professor guy or whatever he is, that was gold, where she's basically just griping about the outfit and it's like, I did this to impress you. Just the whole story she came up with like on the fly just blew my mind. I'm like, this is gold.
It was such good, or like such good writing to take it and have her be just in the moment bitching about, you know, what she doesn't like and just spinning it into this like, oh wait, I gotta make this make sense so that we can still get the thing done. And I love Robin. I will say too, I feel like now I'm getting way off topic, but I do want to say this since we're talking a little bit about Robin. We've kind of mentioned some of the other characters too. One of the things that I really admire about Stranger Things is how they have brought in new characters so seamlessly. And it just feels like, I mean, Robin was one of those last season where she felt like she just fit in and now she's a major player. I feel like Argyle, and I mean, oh my God, Eddie, we haven't even talked about Eddie yet, but like Eddie, like just all these new people. And they just do such a good job of integrating them so quickly that they feel like they've been there the entire time.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a favorite new character that we met this year?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Eddie. I think the kicker is, like, he's definitely my favorite new character. I really like him. The kicker is I like him pre-Chrissy's death. I think afterwards, when he's living in fear, we lose some of the fun of that character. I mean, there's still moments of it, but I feel like he was much stronger leading up to that. Like the whole drug deal scene where he's like, basically, he's not a monster, he's playful. It's like, hey, I'm not a bad guy. I just do this thing. Like, I loved that. I loved his whole cafeteria scene where he's basically, you know, calling out all the...
behind you right now. I have it going on my computer as ambiance for myself.
Nice. Like, I thought that was great. Like, I loved that aspect of him, and I'm hoping that now that he's getting a little more comfortable with the group, I think he seems, you know, once they wind up in the Upside Down, like, he definitely shows a little bit more courage than he had when he was constantly on the run. And I'm hoping in the latter part of you know, in volume 2, we see that side kind of come out again. So fingers crossed, but he's definitely my new favorite. Like, I like Argyle, but he's a little too panicky and stoned for me. I just like,
he's one more person for Jonathan to have to take care of. Bless that boy's heart. He just takes care of everybody.
Yeah.
This is
So,
why his car hasn't been fixed yet.
who was your favorite new character?
I mean, I think I have to say Eddie too. I have ordered my little Hellfire Club t-shirt because of him. I'm very excited for that to come. I'm literally like watching in the background his little monologue that he does about how, Dungeons and Dragons is taking over the world. And now this is the year that I'm going to go, like that whole thing. He just delivered that so well. I tried really hard to avoid interviews before this season because I didn't want to know anything. I didn't want anything to get spoiled. And I also didn't want to start clicking on articles and then see headlines as I was watching and have stuff be spoiled. But I did catch one where he was sitting with three of the older kids. And my reaction was, who the hell is this person? Like, we don't need no new friends. We don't need new people here. And now I am so sorry that brought everyone through my head because I think he's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan or Steve? Are we picking between those? Which one would you pick, Jonathan or Steve? I pick Steve.
Steve.
I'm Team Steve.
I'm Team Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan's a good guy, but he's just he's Jonathan.
He's Jonathan.
Let him live out his bromance with Argyle. Yeah, just let him live out his bromance with Argyle.
So I think that was the only other thing we were going to chat about, the run times. I've seen so many people, and I think it's been more on the critic side, seen so many people complaining about how long these episodes are. They all run like about 75 to 80 minutes, save the last episode, which is, I think, just under 100 minutes. But what did you think about how long the episodes are this season?
I was fine with it. I mean, with as much story as they have to tell, and again, as well as they chunked everything out, I thought it was great. It never felt like I was watching something for a long time. And I get in the binging world, that's probably why people are pissed. They're like, I want to binge this and get it done in however long. But I think they needed that. And they've said that. Like, this story for, this season needed more, which is why it's broken out into two parts because they're still finishing it. But, they needed more time to tell the story. That's why it's such a big season. And I think we would have been cheated as fans if they did try and keep this story condensed to the shorter run times.
I think so too. I mean, I kind of think to all the book series that I love that have been turned into movies, and some of them I get it, like they're 500, 600, 700 plus pages, and like, how do you turn that into a movie that isn't 5 hours long, or start splitting it up into two parts, which I kind of, it's a personal pet peeve with movies. But I think that's kind of the beauty of this. Like you said, they kind of gave it the room to tell the story and hit on all the points that we needed to. And I never once when I was watching it for the first time felt like there was filler. I do find myself getting a touch bored with some of the Elle memory scenes towards the end. And I know it's important, but it's like, now I know the story, so I'm good. I don't know. Those are the only ones that I get bored by, but that's on rewatches. It wasn't, the first watch. I was interested in what was happening.
Even on the first, I'm with you. And I honestly felt like even on the first watch, the one where she keeps reliving the memory, I'm like, this could have been shorter. Like, we get it. Like, you probably could have got to this a little bit quicker than you did.
I think maybe it's because there's so many characters, because, we're essentially every, location that we're talking about, California, Russia, Hawkins, everybody's an ensemble cast and everybody has a role to play. And when it's Elle, it's basically just her, and we don't know any of the other people in the scenes with her.
We didn't talk about, and I don't know if you're going to come back to it, the character we didn't like.
Yes, which one? And I want to read this comment real quick from Toxic Coffin. Hats off to the Duffer Brothers for keeping the show capped at 5 seasons and not dragging the show on and ruining its magic. I agree with that completely. Yeah. I am glad that we are getting the story that they want to tell and not the story that Netflix is forcing them to tell. I'm also glad they're not getting the Sabrina treatment and getting cut off. Not that they would, because this show is massively popular, but
yeah. I think I read today that it's now like the 3rd most watched show on like Netflix, like overall, like for total like hours viewed or something like that.
Do we still have to catch up to Tiger King?
Probably. Okay, so most hated character.
Yes.
So early in the season, Angela, but in the grand scheme of things, Jason Carver. I want to reach through the screen and punch that guy straight in his face. Oh my God.
You're not the first person who's told me that. I love this. Continue.
hate everything about him. Like his holier than thou personality, the way that he's like pep talking everybody constantly. Oh my, it was rough. Like that. There's just that whole personality, and maybe it's just because I struggle with people with that kind of personality to begin with. But oh, when he's like pep talking the town to basically to get their pitchforks and torches, I just want to reach through the screen and choke him. But
I don't like his character. I'm with you on that, but I love the performance from the perspective of like that scene at the town meeting. It just clicked all of a sudden, like, oh my God, he's like the 80s TV evangelist personified now. And I like that just clicked, and I fell in love with him for like the briefest of seconds after that. And I was like, I really appreciate that they like are using that tiny little detail of the 80s and, you know, putting it into this character. I thought they wrote the character brilliantly. Hate him, do not like him, also would love to punch him, but
yeah, he's tough to swallow, and the fact he keeps coming back and he's consistent. His character is so consistent, and I'm just like,
yeah. I think I'm.
Anyway, sorry, I got a little fired up there.
No, I love it. That's kind of honestly how I feel about Angela. And like the moment when Elle nailed her with the roller skate, I was like, oh God, oh God, Elle, what did you do? And then I was like, no, wait, she just hit Angela in the face. Good job. Because I've had a hard time, actually. I haven't gone back and rewatched the first 2 episodes because I had a really hard time with them. Like, I think it triggered me a little bit from the girls who made fun of me when I was in middle school. And I just had a flashback moment of like, I have lived this. Like, I just, everything inside me just cringed, and like my heart broke for Elle when they're making fun of her while she's trying to give her, you know, presentation about Hopper in the first episode. So those scenes and the heartbreak you see from her, and just knowing like, okay, she's grown up a lot since the first season, but she's still, if you, in the grand scheme of things, leaps and bounds behind all these other kids. Like, you just feel for her, and that Angela was just so despicable. Like, it was brutal. Hard to watch. Yeah, she did. I see a comment. I hate Yuri.
Yuri?
I mean, he left. Let's be real. He left Hopper stranded. So of course I hate him to my core. But also, I mean, he's funny.
Yeah, I mean, he's amusing, and I mean, he got his comeuppance. I mean, I'm curious to see what happens in Volume 2.
I hope he gets left behind for the Demogorgon.
We'll see. I don't know. Russia looks interesting from the teasers from the next volume. So,
has there been a teaser that's dropped? Have I missed it?
Did you not see it at the end of the last episode? Oh, okay. So, hey, folks, if you haven't watched this, watch it all the way through. So, you know how the credits on Netflix will go into other languages of like who did the voices or who did the whatever? Go through all of that. Let it play out. It will play you a Volume 2 teaser. It's the only way I've been able to find that you can get to it, though, because you can't get to it from, you know how there's like the extras and trailers on Netflix? It doesn't show up there, but if you go to episode 7, go all the way to the end and let it run its thing, it'll pop up and play it for you. It's about 30 seconds. Oh, I could tell you all sorts of fun stuff.
I'm so mad right now. Why didn't I think to do that?
Because you didn't want to sit through like the 5,000 languages that it's in there. I just fast forwarded.
Oh my God. Okay, well, I know what I'm doing as soon as we're done here. So noted. Yeah, now I don't even remember what we were talking about because my brain just went, oh my God.
We were talking about people we hate, and I derailed wherever you were going. So.
It's okay. That actually is a perfect segue into our next little section. So both of us have seen people ask questions about things that we both know and that have been fairly widely publicized. So we wanted to chat a little bit about that next. I will say my first one. Okay, so obviously go watch the end of episode 7 through the credits because there's another 30 seconds that I completely missed. And now I'm pissed about that. Now I understand where these, okay, it's all making sense now. There's a David Harbour fan account that I follow that's been posting random photos. I'm like, where did these come from? We haven't seen any of this. Now I know. But with that too, I've seen a lot of people think that this was like the dead end of Stranger Things and like we're done. This was the final thing. There are 2 more episodes in season 4. They billed it as volume 2, like Mike said, because they took so damn long to edit these because they're so long. And I saw on Twitter, I think Stranger Things or Stranger Writers, I think is the account, but their writers room posted that the final episode of this season runs 2 hours and 19 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah.
So FYI, but there's 2 more episodes in this season that come out July 1. And then we have the 5th season, which I have seen them, I think the Duffers have said, will come out much faster, obviously, than this season did, because hopefully we knock on something. Hopefully we won't have another global pandemic to deal with. But that was my little tidbit that I wanted to make sure that we touched on. So, and I know you had one too. You've seen a lot of people questioning the time gap between the Hawkins Lab massacre that we see in the final episode compared to where the series picks up from season 1. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, and what I was seeing is where there was like this uproar about the way that 11 talks in season 1 versus season 4. And I think what a lot of people are forgetting is there's that gap. You figure the events of season 4, where we see the flashbacks, are 1979. And then we fast forward to 1983, where it's season 1. Yeah. I mean, we've all obviously seen the trauma that 11 goes through at the end of season 4, which is, again, 4 years prior. You know, my hunch initially was like, this girl's been through some trauma. In that 4 years, she was still stuck in Hawkins' lab. Who knows what Brenner did to her? Because we obviously know Brenner was not as nice as he was in this 1979 scene we see. So who knows what kind of trauma she's been involved with. The cool thing about it is I wasn't wrong. So the Duffer Brothers actually did an interview recently, and they basically said that, and they kind of spoiled actually volume 2, and explained that, yeah, she doesn't talk in part 1 because of all of this trauma. She apparently, kind of like Henry Creel does, she falls into a coma after what we see in season 4, in volume 1. And so that's kind of like he did, where like he used his powers, didn't know his limits, falls into a coma. When she comes back, Brenner basically says, okay, you're my lab rat now. I'm not going to let this happen again. And she spends, you know, the next 4 years essentially in isolation. So, I mean, I think all things considered, like the events that happened in 79, falling into a coma, and then basically being isolated from the world, you're going to regress. And that's essentially what's happened. So I think, thankfully, they kind of came out and kind of put the kibosh on that and told folks like, hey, like, yeah, it's different because of this. Like, if you live this, you're not going to be talking, you know, like most people either. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things too, where like if you're just blowing through it and like you're just like next episode, and you're not taking the time to step back and think about and appreciate the story a little bit too, because I mean that's really why we're watching this, right? Because it's a really good story. Like this is honestly, as a writer, this is like the epitome of storytelling to me right now. Like I want to be able to be at this level, and I feel like such a failure because I googled how old the Duffer Brothers are. They're 2.5 months older than me. That's it. I'm a freaking failure at life. But that's an Instagram live for another day, possibly a therapy session. I don't know.
Oh jeez.
So, but I mean, there's so much nuance to it, and I think if you're not, I don't know, everybody watches it differently, but there's just so much here. And I think you just have to take the time to appreciate all that. So one other thing that you did that I wanted to talk about, you did a really great article on your site about how, so there's a lot of, we'll call it like tie-in content. So like there's a lot of books, like novelizations of various things. So like the only one that I've read up to this point is like the background story on Max before she moved to moved to Hawkins from California, and kind of like what transpired as she moved to Hawkins. There's a Hopper one. I know there's a backstory on Brenner. And then there's a couple different comic series. So you pointed out and wrote a really great article on your site that one of those series actually doesn't fall in line with the story anymore. So do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I will try not to tangent and rage as much as I did over Jason Carver, but
please rage. We love rage.
No. Yeah, so essentially
no roller skates, okay?
No,
these glasses are new. No roller skates.
No roller skates. Okay. No, I mean, yeah. So it's kind of weird. So if you do follow along with the comic book series, there's been like 4 or 5 different series. The first one was essentially they took season 1 of the show and flipped it upside down, where it was all Will's perspective. So everything that happened in season 1, it was from that. The next series that came out, though, was actually a prequel series called 6, and it was about this this other Hawkins lab rat, if you will, number 6, and essentially her time there. And the Duffer Brothers, or whoever worked on the episode in season 4, where 10 is doing his studies and kind of trying to, practice being psychic and find things, mentions 6 as being alive. And that's the kicker, because in the 6 comic book series, it happens in 1978, and she dies. She's ultimately, her and 2 other subjects escape the lab, and she gets shot by a security guard while they're escaping. So realistically, 6 should no longer exist in the Stranger Things universe come 1979, but she does. And if it had just been in that scene, I could have let it slide, but then the kicker is 6 is a legitimate player later on that goes up against 2 when they're in the room fighting each other telekinetically and trying to push each other out of the circle. So it kind of killed it, because I'm like, okay, you've used 6. And I think, like, my whole thing that drove me bonkers is when Jody Houser wrote the 6 series, and then it actually had a follow-up series called Into the Fire that continued the story of the 2 escaped Hawkins lab patients and or subjects. And essentially what happened is, when she wrote, the Duffer Brothers said, you can use any test subject you want except for 1. Do not use 1. And now we know why. But obviously she didn't get the same courtesy, because fast forward to 4, we now have essentially the 6 comic book and Into the Fire, the follow-up, which, references that character and that storyline, are no longer canon. Like, they don't fit into the universe, because we've now seen 6 essentially get pushed out of a circle, and he's a dude. So, yeah, and one of those continuation things that was kind of frustrating for me, because it's I love when series like this, and I mean we've seen this with like the Marvel movies and things like that, where you find all these things that tie together and piece together, and they've done such a good job at telling these little pieces of story in between seasons with the comic books. That's what was so frustrating, because I'm like, you've done such an amazing job at finding these little moments in time that you're not going to tell in the series, but just add to the lore, add to the story. And I'm like, not to mention, the whole damn series was called 6. How do you use 6 when you called it 6? Anyway, done. Off my soapbox.
The whole, like, they forgot Will's birthday thing, which I didn't realize when I was initially watching it. It took a TikTok for me to know that, but I know we chatted about this last night, where the Duffers acknowledged, like, oh yeah, we let that slip. But in season 2, when Will has the mind flayer in him, and they're trying to, like, bring Will back to the surface, Joy sits down and she's talking with him, and she's like, March 22nd, do you know what that is? It's your birthday. And it's like going on about it. Yeah. And then when we're watching episode 2, when they're at the skating rink and one of the bullies has the video camera, it very clearly says March 22nd, 1986 on it. So, like, no wonder Will is pissed off at everybody, because they all forgot his freaking birthday. And then he had to come home to Murray making him birthday risotto. Like,
I almost wish that they had caught it sooner and been able to, like, somehow play it off that was part of the reason he was pissed. But it is what it is.
Maybe they'll catch up to the rest of us.
So the Duffer Brothers, in that same interview where they were talking about the whole timeline or the timing and Elle's speaking abilities, they brought up the fact that maybe they could find a way, because March is close enough to May, that they can move his birthday to May and just, like, dub it in to make it change. I don't think they'll really go do that, but that would be kind of funny.
I will say, too, I don't know that Will is necessarily an Aries, because March 22nd would be like day 1 of Aries season. He strikes me much more as a Pisces, so maybe they just flubbed it all together, and his birthday is actually February 22nd. He's an Aquarius.
I think it would. Yeah. I think it would be tough to dub February over saying March. But.
True. So, well, okay, I've seen a whole lot of new people come in. So if you're watching, just a reminder, we are talking about Stranger Things season 4. We are spoiling everything. So if you haven't finished, if you don't want to know what happens, get out. Bye. We don't want you here. We do, but come back and watch it later. It'll be on my channel. Should we dig into some of the details that we really liked about this season?
Sure.
All right. So I think the biggest thing is the music and the role that the music plays. And I have said several times now that this show has really finally made me appreciate 80s music. It was never really my thing. I liked new wave and kind of alternative 80s music, and that was sort of it. But this show has definitely, like, it made me fall in love with Africa by Toto, like, in that first season. And there's just so many, like, iconic songs that I've totally changed my mind about. And I really love that music kind of became almost a character finally in and of itself. I feel like it always has been, but it kind of made its presence known finally this season with just the whole Vecna storyline and how you get out of his curse, I guess. I don't know that you break it necessarily, but
Right.
so
Yeah, no,
you're a huge music fan too, so I know we're gonna geek out about this.
yeah, no, and I mean, it is nice to see that become, like you said, a character in and of itself, and the fact that essentially it's now a major plot point. It's not just I mean, not saying it was a nostalgia gimmick to begin with, but I mean, it really kind of was in a way, because it's all tying back to that time period and really make you feel immersed and kind of set the tone for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, like I'm with you. I like the fact that it's a character now, and it's clearly going to continue to be a big piece of this season in some way, shape, or form. The one thing I did find interesting about this season, though, and I don't know if you picked up on this, they did seem to deviate pretty regularly in terms of the vibe that the soundtrack had, and even in the songs, they didn't stick. I mean, it makes sense when they go to the Creel House flashback, but they were using songs from that period even outside of flashbacks. So there's the scene when they're on the lake and they see Eddie. The two guys are on the lake and they see Eddie, and it's not an 80s song that's playing on their radio. It's like something, I forget who it was, but it's an oldies song.
It is. Oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting. I'm thinking of when Yuri's getting in like when they're all in the plane and it's Traveling Man as they're like, starting.
That's what it is. Same song.
Yeah.
It carries over into that scene. Same song. You're right. Yeah, like it's not an 80s vibe, and I'm like, okay, this ties to the fact that they're traveling. But it was surprising. I feel like all the other seasons have been so heavily influenced by kind of 80s music. It was interesting to see them kind of change that tone. And maybe it makes sense because we are flashing back to so many different time periods. Maybe it kind of blends that, but I was surprised at how it felt a little less synth heavy, a little less 80s pop heavy. And I guess part of that too could be the tone of the show. I mean, we get it, we're kind of hit in the face with it pretty quickly in the first couple episodes, but then after that, I feel like it kind of dies out. And I think it might just be tone, but yeah.
For sure. Toxic Coffin made a comment. The Susie episode, the music goes full on Pee Wee Herman style. I was chuckling. I love that. I saw Spooky Little Mama pop in. I don't know if she's still watching, but she would not be thrilled with that. I used to watch Pee Wee as a kid, and she hated him with a burning passion. It's real funny. Okay, so kind of on that note, talking about how the sound of the music sort of shifted a little bit. I feel like I noticed this season too, and I made 2 song notes. I updated this list, so if you printed it before today, I'm sorry because I tweaked it slightly. But I noticed this season too that a lot of the songs, because I've gotten into the habit of watching stuff with closed captioning on, just because I find that I catch more of the dialogue, especially on like rewatches with it too. But the nice thing about that is usually not all of them, but the song title and the artist will pop up. And so I was noticing that and like going back and looking at lyrics and finding that a lot of the songs that they're using too, like the emotions expressed in the song definitely match the scene that we're seeing. So one is in the very first episode when Robin and Steve are in the car and he's driving her to school and she's like trying to do her makeup because, she feels like she looks like crap.
It's the boobies scene.
Yeah, the boobies scene. Boobies, Robin, boobies.
Yeah.
But the song that's playing in the background is called Object of My Desire, which I think is hilarious because Steve is talking about his girl problems and then Robin is chiming in with her girl problems too. And I just love that like the title of the song paired perfectly kind of with the subject matter that the two characters are discussing. The other one that I caught is in like about halfway through episode, maybe not halfway, maybe like a third of the way into episode 4, when they're driving to the cemetery, because that's where Max wants to go next. And there's this scene, and everybody's dead quiet in the car, but there's a scene of her and Lucas sitting in the back seat, and the song that's playing is called Hard Feelings. And I just love that because I mean, it's just so perfect given kind of like what their two characters are going through together, and kind of you feel like this reconciliation is hopefully going to happen by the end of this season. But I just, it felt like there's a lot more purposeful, like you were saying, and that's how I noticed it, purposeful use of music throughout this season. Yeah.
Well, even, and I mean, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but even the use of running up that hill, and even though that's a song about lovers, you can tell that Max's character, like, she's conflicted, and it almost feels like, did that song stick because she's wishing, like, I wish it were me and not Billy? And like Billy even makes that comment when they're in the Upside Down about how, like, you know, so like there's a piece of me that wonders if maybe that's why lyrically it's stuck. Well, even though it's technically about lovers kind of switching places and being able to get that different perspective. Like, there was a part of me that wonders if that's some of it too, where now that she's living this way and she's unhappy, like, I could have done something. Maybe it should have been me instead of him. Like, I didn't do anything.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful and probably the best known illustration. And again, I think, I don't know, just as somebody who's always geeked out about music, like, there are specific artists that I think of that I absolutely love. And I feel like everything that you need to know about them is in their songs. And if you're not listening to songs, like, you're not paying attention. I don't think nearly enough of us pay attention to that. I have to go back. I think it was that I like Coffee with My Sugar. Somebody made the comment about they really hope that Max doesn't run out of batteries on her little Walkman, or that we don't have to have the scene where she's trying to like the tape all unravels from the cassette and we're having to like crank it back with a pencil at some point. High stress. Talk about high stress.
Well, see, I was already thinking the fact that, like, I don't think I ever had a Walkman back then that lasted that damn long. So I'm thinking, hey, like, you're pulling some liberties there, Netflix. The same thing, too, with that computer when they're at Susie's house. I'm like, your power went out and came back, and that thing booted faster than my PC probably does now. I'm like, in the 80s, that would have taken you the next 5 minutes. Her dad would have been back before that thing booted. But
that printer, now that we're talking about that printer was pretty fast, too.
Yeah.
I remember those being painfully slow in the early 90s in elementary school.
Yep. Yeah. They had special 80s stuff.
Yes. The Upside Down gives them magical powers, I guess. Okay, so one of the other things since we're talking about Max and the song, so this was actually a point, I saw her come in, hopefully she's still hanging out here. Hi, Midge. She and I have been geeking out about Stranger Things for like the last week over text messages and sharing like TikToks and stuff back and forth. But she started rewatching from season 1 and almost immediately was like, oh my God, Will in the Upside Down in season 1, he's constantly singing the Clash song. And like, they like planted that seed all the way back in season 1 of music being the saving force, basically, in the Upside Down, which I just, when she said that, I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I love that like little detail, and like how I think when we get to the end of this, it's all just going to be woven together so beautifully. And it's going to melt my brain, and I'm going to be jealous because I didn't write it. It's fun. So, okay, on that note too, I guess I have to ask, what song would save you from Vecna's curse? And can we do like real world song and maybe a Halloween song?
All right, the real world song is going to be The Cure's Disintegration. Like, I love that song with a passion, and it's my favorite all-time song. Like, that would pull me out of that curse. I'd be like, huh?
I hope you're all taking notes.
And I'd be gone. My second Halloween song. Oh God, this is a tough one. God.
Do you want to think about it while I answer with mine?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I shared this in my stories the other day, and I had 1 or 2 people respond, and they're like, well, I'm sure glad you told us that because we never would have guessed. So my real world song would be God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. and like very specifically the bridge, because it's just like all the harmonies that are layered. It's just so beautiful. I love it. Beach Boys are my all-time favorite band, if you didn't know that. Because I love those dang brother and cousin harmonies. They're fantastic. And I mean, I feel like my Halloween song, you guys could probably guess it at this point. It's relatively obvious. Spooky by Classic 4. Like that would just by default. So I feel like that song's kind of become my unofficial, maybe official at this point, anthem as a Halloween blogger.
I'm gonna
Monster
go really.
Mash. Get out of here, Midge. After that.
I'm gonna go really obscure on my Halloween song, and I've been kind of going back and forth. And I'm gonna go with Sean Keller's "Don't Forget My Ghost" from Killer Sounds of Halloween. It's a ballad. It's not your typical Halloween song, but that song, like, no joke, I think I listened to that song every week when I was working on the This Week in Geek newsletter, like for probably a good 6 to 8 months. Like just constantly, like there was just something about that song. I just loved it. I take that back. It was the album, but somehow timing wise, that song would play every time I was wrapping up the newsletter. And there's something about that song. Like, you know, I had Sean play it live when I did Instagram Live, you know, last year. It's just, it's a powerful song. And I think it's one of those songs where I think I would hear it and I'd be like, and it would just pull me out of that, like the song. I love it. Like, so I think I'm going to go obscure and go with that.
I like that one a lot. I was gonna say, okay, if I pause,
if it was main,
one of my friends was just calling me, and I had to decline it real quick. She may call me back because she did that last week. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, you have that on your Instagram,
yes.
Right? Okay, yeah.
It's under Friday Night Frights. Yeah.
Yeah, go back through Mike's lives. He does an interview series as well, kind of like I've done for the last 2 years now. But he's interviewed a bunch of different people than I have, which is fantastic because there's even more Halloween people out there for you to discover. But yeah, Sean Keller is awesome. If you haven't listened to his Halloween music, go do that for yourself.
If I had to pick a mainstream like track, it'd probably be like Dead Man's Party by Uncle Boingo.
That's good. That's a really good one. I should have asked you guys too to throw out your songs. I've seen a few of them. Spooky Scary Skeletons. That would not be mine. We all know my love-hate relationship with that song just being everywhere a couple of years ago.
I was almost teetering on a few of the Lovecraft tracks that have come out in recent years, but I feel like I just wind up dancing in the Upside Down and never getting out of there. In fact, they'd be looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? And then kill me, ultimately.
True. All right, moving on. So I think this one is going to be interesting because you and I have very different opinions about this next topic. So one of the things that I've seen a lot of people discuss is Will's storyline this season with his crush that's developing. And my assumption has been, okay, we're progressing towards it being shared that Will is gay and he's secretly in love with Mike, because it seems like that's very heavily hinted at in this season with several of the conversations that the two of them have together. And just like the painting too, and like not seeing it, but Elle hinting at like she thinks that he's painting it for a secret crush, and she thinks it's a girl. But you have a very different take on Will and where his storyline is going.
So, I mean, I think it's different and it's not. I definitely think there is an opportunity that perhaps Will is in fact gay. You know, I think there's been some discussions around that. I know a few of the actors have kind of said like it's purposely being left ambiguous so fans can decide what they want to do with the character. Then I've also seen suggestions that maybe, you know, like we're going to see something in the coming episodes that really kind of solidifies it, whether they outright say it or not. And your boy David Harbour, I don't know if you heard about the interview he did, but he basically kind of clowned and is like, no, he wants to spend the rest of his life in the basement playing D&D with Mike. So
that's fair.
Yeah. So, but I mean, so I think there's still very much a possibility that could be the case and that could play out that way. There's a piece of me that feels, though, that what we're seeing in Will, it has a lot to do with maturity and the fact that he essentially lost, 2 years of his life, first in the Upside Down, and then when he got back, basically being tortured by the Mind Flayer. And so there's a piece of me that feels that he really does. And even when he made the comment of like, I've been a third wheel all day, like he feels like the outsider, even though this is his group of friends and they've always been close. I felt like he still feels like an outsider. And I think he's struggling because they make the, what did you think we're gonna play D&D all day like for the rest of our lives? And he's like, yeah, like I think that's because he missed out on so much of that time together. You figure Dustin, Lucas, the whole core group, they bonded while they were trying to find him in the Upside Down. And then when he was struggling with the Mind Flayer, he was the outsider. He was the outcast. And again, that core group was bonding, was building those relationships. And I think he feels now, especially with moving and now even separated even further, like he's somehow missed out on that and lost some of that. And I think some of that is coming out. I think there's a little bit of maybe immaturity in that. And I think there's also a longing for like, I missed out on this. I want this. And kind of in a way throwing a hissy fit. Like, I want this. I didn't get this. And you're not giving it to me. Come on.
Yeah.
But again, that's not to say that there might not be an underlying, like he's also gay. Like, I definitely think that's a possibility. I don't know if that's what's driving his actions now.
I love that. So thank you for sharing it. Kate made a really great comment. I want to protect Will at all costs. And that's kind of how I feel and where a lot of my like thoughts, hopes, concerns around this come from, because I feel like Will has just been through so much. And I feel like I'm being led down this path where he's going to come out and then he's going to confess his feelings to Mike. And I don't think, I honestly could go either way on Mike feeling the same at this point, because it's from Mike. He won't tell Elle that he loves her. He'll chase after the police car and tell her that he'll save her, but he can't freaking tell her that he loves her. It's fine. But I just don't want Will to go through anything bad again. Like, I just don't want them to. His character has been through enough. Don't do that to Will.
We'll see. And I mean, you bring up a good point, and that's one of the reasons why I almost feel like it's not going to come to fruition, and it might stay like make it your own.
It up and never
because of that. Not to mention, like, Will clearly knows to some degree what Mike's feelings, whether he still loves her or not, that he still has feelings for Elle, and that's clearly a strong relationship that he has had, even if it's on the rocks right now. So I feel like it would be weird for Will to come out knowing that, at least for now, Mike's in a straight relationship. Would he want to come out and face that rejection? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But that's another reason I feel like that could blow up in his face, and that just feels like one more. I don't know, with where the story's going, I feel like it would deter too much from kind of where things are headed and create its own sub-mess, if you will.
That's very true. Okay, so I've seen a few really good comments. I want to read through a few of these. I'm scrolling back to Midge's when we were talking about the painting. What if Will's painting is just like the ultimate D&D map? I love that. I think Will is going to die and Mike will finally see Will's painting. I think that's a very real possibility. I don't want Will to die. But
are we going to talk about who we think is going to kick the bucket later? Because
we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, or Tiffany chimed in with, or Will die to protect Elle from Mike. So many theories. I know. I don't like thinking about this either. Okay. Sorry. Scrolling through all the comments, making sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I think we've talked through most of this, actually, all my notes that I made. So a couple more things just on the details that we've enjoyed, unless you have anything else that you want to add, and then we'll kind of unanswered questions, and then we'll start to wrap things up. So you may be able to speak to this better than I can. I know Midge was having this conversation with me because she's a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan, but I've seen a lot of people. I've only seen the first movie, and obviously Robert Englund is in the series. He's Victor, if you don't know. I didn't recognize him at first. It took till seeing his name in the credits, and I was like, "Wait, Freddie was in this?" And I was that, and then I went back, and I was like, "Oh, okay." But I've seen people say there's a lot of parallels between that series and some of the kind of the imagery that we see throughout season 4. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? I feel like you're better equipped to talk about that than me.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely parallels. And I mean, I think the entire way that Vecna works is essentially Freddy Krueger. The difference is, instead of getting you in your dreams, he's essentially getting you in your memories. But it plays out very much the same. Like, you fall asleep, Freddy's going to come into your nightmares and he's going to kill you. Whereas in this case, you could be doing anything, and Vecna's going to tap into your head, find your memory, make you relive that in that moment, and kill you. So, I mean, essentially their methods are near identical. I know there's a known, like a confirmed Easter egg where we do, when you mentioned Robert Englund as Victor Creel, when he's in the cell and he's scratching the table, that was a direct nod to like Freddy Krueger and the claws. Like that was on purpose. They did that as a nod to him. You know, Dustin, of course, references Freddy Krueger
in the very next
in the
episode.
series. Yeah, and kind of talks about it of like, hey, and kind of explains this of like, but the flip side of it being he references it because of like Freddy Krueger's boiler room, which is essentially where, you know, you could get Freddy if you really ever do get Freddy. But I mean, that's essentially what it's implying, is that the Creel house in the Upside Down is kind of where you can get him. This is where he's vulnerable. This is where he's open to being attacked. So I think those are the key areas. I will say, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, Chrissy's entire scene when she's finally offed felt to me like it could be an entire moment in a Nightmare on Elm Street film. The way that
Brendan with that too, Diana did and said,
"Oh, really?
Vecna kills Chrissy" is just
yeah, that entire scene feels like it was out of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Like when I watched that, it, like the lighting, the way that there were reveals of like, you know, something's not right because her dad's not really there because she's in Eddie's trailer. Something's going to be bad, and sure enough, he turns around and his eyes are missing, his mouth's still shut. You know, all of that just played like something out of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I don't know if they've come out and said that, but I really feel like they probably went back to either probably a Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and just kind of played off that whole vibe. Because it feels to me like towards the end of a Nightmare on Elm Street when Nancy actually, you know, gets Freddy, like it kind of plays out a little bit like that in terms of the way it's shot and things like that.
I will say too, I think it's very interesting that, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the ending too and kind of where we think things are going to go next, but I thought it was very interesting. I never saw the fact that Nancy was going to get taken by Vecna. I don't know why. It's super obvious given the whole Barb story, because that's like literally her whole storyline in season 1 is Barb. But I think it's interesting that the character named Nancy is the one taken by Vecna and gets left hanging in the Upside Down where we leave things right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's well for her.
So, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this. If we're going to talk about this, I don't want to go on a tangent, so just stop me if so. But one of the things that I was trying to figure out was, is there something about Vecna and how he chooses his victims? And I kind of went back and when I was rewatching it to kind of figure that out, like, is there a certain theme to it? Is there a certain type of person he's pulling? You know, Max, it was clearly, it felt like it was based on the pain she was feeling over Billy's death. Chrissy, it's a little bit more nuanced. The one thing that kind of plays out twice when she experiences Vecna is that whole scene with her mom basically making her cheer outfit bigger. So I was like, okay, there were two things that came to mind. A, is she maybe anorexic and like that's why she was throwing up in the bathroom? Like maybe she was gaining weight and that was a thing and they don't really address it directly. My other thing was like, is she pregnant? Like they had to take out her cheer outfit. Like I know that's a whole other thing.
I didn't even think that. I just assumed eating disorder.
So I thought eating disorder too, but I was like, could it be that? But then the third one and you'll have to forgive me because I can't think of his name, the basketball player who's well, I guess we can go Fred. You know, Fred essentially. Patrick, okay, yeah. Well, we'll go to Fred first because he was the next one that got knocked off. Like, he obviously left a scene of a crash and left somebody for dead. Like, okay, that was his thing. But Patrick's, like, was kind of weak. Like, when Vecna taps into his memory, it's just his dad bitching at him because he was out drinking. And basically, he's an embarrassment to the family. So I was trying to, like, connect the dots and be like, okay, are these somehow tying to, like, the 7 deadly sins? Or is there something weird like that they're trying to connect the dots with on how he chooses these victims? But it wasn't very clear. And I was looking for like hints of that later in part 4 to see if there was anything that he kind of spoke to when he gave his full rundown of like, here's my backstory. And it wasn't there. But I'd be curious to know, like, how does he choose that? Because when Patrick first gets tapped into, you see him passing by all those different memories, and it's like there's an abused wife. You can hear her basically saying like, oh, I'll cover it up with makeup. You have like a few others that it goes by. So like, what made him choose Patrick? Just, because his dad was chewing him out for drinking. Like, why? So that's one of the things I'm curious about, and I'm curious to see if they tell us like how he chooses his victims or why he chooses them.
I am too. I think that kind of takes us into our next little section, kind of the unanswered questions that we still have. And I see a couple of them going by too. So, I mean, I think it is kind of hard to decide how Vecna chooses his victims, because I think we're kind of slanted towards expecting it to be like you witness somebody die just because there's so many of those. But like you were saying, kind of when we're seeing those flashes of like when he's deciding, it's not necessarily just death. It's, I mean, just kind of trauma in general. And it does feel interesting that Chrissy is the first one to go, and she doesn't necessarily have a death trauma, but still trauma, obviously. But
well, and
so I
guess
it'll be interesting to see how that gets answered.
And what took me to the 7 deadly sins piece of it, as I was like, okay, if Chrissy's is like an eating disorder or something, is that like vanity or something along those lines? And then I was thinking with Nancy being, stuck at the end, and he's so focused on that Barb moment, is that lust? Because that's when Barb died because she was with Steve in that moment getting freaky. So does that somehow tie into it? Like that, that's kind of where my head was going. But then I was like, I'm like, where does the drinking beer come in? Like Patrick's was like the weakest one. I'm like, all these other ones, I'm like, this poor kid drank some beer and now he's dead. Like, come on.
Let this be a lesson to you children. Don't drink beer.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going the horror code, like, okay, we go after somebody for drinking, we go after someone for having sex. So I don't know what
I mean, that would support Chrissy being pregnant.
But I mean, yeah, fair. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so
TBD.
That's one of our unanswered questions. Next one, I'm going to jump to the bottom of our list for this one, because I've seen a couple people say, we don't trust the counselor. I don't think I do either. I didn't catch this, but there's a really fantastic article from, I think it was Pop Sugar, that credit where credit's due, Andrew from Your Best Halloween Ever sent to me, and then I sent it to Mike as well. But basically they're discussing kind of all the little details with Miss Kelly, down to there's a necklace that she's wearing that I think it's a clock, but it's like a key, which I think is really interesting. And I'm very curious. One of my other things on this list too is what's with the clocks? Like that piece hasn't been addressed, and like I feel like the Duffer said, like, we're going to time travel. And even like, I mean, I was rewatching the beginning of episode 1 before we started. And even Elle, when she's reading, like doing the voiceover of her letter to Mike, she's talking about, time is such a strange thing. It feels like it, it speeds up and it slows down, and kind of like we're the masters of our own time, sort of a thing. And I feel like that's very much like some sort of a statement that's going to play into how this season ends. But now I'm talking about two different things. Let's go back to Miss Kelly, the counselor. Impressions on her.
Yeah, I mean, there's a piece of me that almost feels like that it would be too obvious, which is why I'm thinking she's not. The other thing too is I feel like, at least based off how Max described the engagements with like when people got involved with the counselor, it didn't feel like she went to them first. It felt like they sought her out versus the other way around. I think if she was going to these kids and be like, oh, it seems like something's wrong, like you should come talk to me, like then maybe I'd feel it a little bit more. But I think to me it felt more like circumstance. And even when I watched it the second time, I still got that vibe. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I also wonder too, like, I mean, how do you tie her back to it? Was she somebody at like Hawkins' lab? If so, I mean, he essentially massacred everybody there. So how did she survive unless he somehow befriended her when he was working there? So, I mean, it's still TBD. We'll see. I don't feel like, I felt like it would have been too obvious. I think she just maybe was even thrown in there to get people talking about it. Like, oh, she's got to be tied to it.
Well, I thought it was going to be too obvious that Hopper just like magically survived the key blowing up at the end of last season, but apparently that is what happened. Who knows why? I was fully convinced.
You were just hopeful. That wasn't a matter of there was no rhyme or reason to it. You just wanted more Hopper.
And I'm actually sitting here thinking we haven't even discussed anything that happened in Russia. I'm holding myself back for you guys. You don't even know. You're welcome. Okay, so the other thing, an unanswered question, and I'm curious to see how this gets explained, and I have no explanation still. I've been puzzling over this for a week now. Why is the Upside Down stuck on November 6, 1983, the day that Will went missing?
So I will share a little tidbit here in that same interview with the Duffer Brothers. By this, they are saying that the Reddit community will figure it out more than likely come volume 2. Like apparently we get enough more that's likely when like the diehards will figure it out. He said, but they did say it will be explained in obviously season 5. That said, the only thing, because we don't get a lot, the only thing I can think of. So when we see him first go into the Upside Down before he's truly Vecna, there is nothing there. It's just mountains, fire, and brimstone, and nothing else. My take on it, I have the feeling that somehow whatever happened in 1983, that whatever that blip was that caused him to be able to connect across worlds.
You just want to do the Argyle blip thing. Blip, 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 blip. Sorry.
But
that word is ruined.
I mean, that worked. But no, like whatever happened then, I feel like he was able to essentially capture Hawkins in that moment. So when it first happened, he somehow magically created this universe, an upside down universe of where he was. And I feel like whatever happened in 1983, that he was able to connect through that, whether that's the arrival of the Demogorgon or if he did something else, like whatever it was, it allowed him to capture that and create that moment in time. And that's why it's stuck there. And it's not something that he's constantly evolving. It's like capture a moment in time. Boom, this is my world now. So that's my take. That's the only thing I could think of, is that was the moment he was able to do something and kind of go from there.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Now I'm thinking, sorry, my brain is going. No, I'm thinking too, like, so back to the point of like when we see Vecna go into the Upside Down, and it's like you're saying, kind of fire and brimstone sort of imagery. There's like not the Upside Down that we know. I do think it's really interesting if you go back and like listen to, now that you know that he is in the Upside Down, and go back with the perspective of he created it. When one is giving that big long speech to Elle before she attacks him in the memory, he's talking about like basically come with me, join my side, like the whole Darth Vader thing, like join the dark side.
Yeah.
And like we'll create, he very specifically says we'll create our own world, or like we'll create a life that we want to live, like very specifically says that. And so I feel like that statement very much speaks to the Upside Down getting created.
Maybe. I see, and I'm in the belief of Dustin. I think the Upside Down predates Vecna and the whole moment with 11. I think it predates that. See, I took him a little bit more literally. I think he was thinking like, I think humans are trash and we can go out and do whatever we want and make this world like real life Hawkins ours. I don't know that it was, in my opinion, I don't think it was necessarily the Upside Down. I think he was like, we have the power to do whatever we want here, and we could do it and basically become supervillains. I mean, basically Darth Vader and Luke, and
yeah,
that perfect Star Wars moment of like, join me and together we'll rule the galaxy. Like,
okay, so I just had a little bit of a light bulb moment too. I don't know that it holds up now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, but I'm wondering if potentially, like, I mean, is the idea of Upside Down a red herring, and the Upside Down is actually like post-apocalyptic real world, and like the world that we think we live in, that we're seeing as like, 90% of the story, that's actually the Upside Down, like the fake world that doesn't exist. And maybe Elle is using her mind control powers and all. I don't know. It seems too easy, but
That's
also I
a
thought
lot
like
to get through in one more season.
I know. Well, I mean, I'm like, it seems way too obvious too from a storytelling perspective. But there's been a few moments with this last season where I'm like, that. I mean, just again, the whole Hopper. Oh no, JKLOL. He actually really was down on that platform. Just whoopsie, he tripped, and somehow Joyce didn't notice him down there. It's fine. It's fine. Whatever. I'm not bitter.
I mean, at least they didn't make you wait this entire time to find out he was alive. You could have thought for the last however many years that he was dead.
How do you make the pandemic worse for Miranda? It's been
Hopper's still dead.
years thinking Hopper is dead and having to argue with people. No, he's not. This is what happened. I mean, I guess that's the one gift of, Valentine's Day in 2020. Not that we're remembering dates when the trailer got dropped, but the teaser got dropped. On that note, though, since I haven't geeked out about Hopper, can we just talk about that scene with the freaking Demogorgon really quick and how I stood on my feet like this the entire time and was like squealing and jumping up and down like I was standing there like I was Joyce watching him. I also kept screaming at him to look up, see Joyce, look up before that whole thing. And it's like literally every little thing that could have gone wrong in that scene went wrong for him. And I'm like, okay, he's dead. He's dead man walking. Like, we have to kill somebody, right? And thank God that didn't happen. But then as soon as that stress is over, then they're like locked in that little jail. And then like I died again when Joyce finally, like he sees Joyce and she runs to him and hugs him. And he just has this like completely, oh my God. David Harbour played that so well, like that shocked look. And then just kind of finally like you just watch him melt into the hug. But oh my God, so good. So intense.
He was strong. I mean, not to say that he wasn't good in the past seasons, but I feel like this was a strong season for the ups and downs that he had while in Russia. Like that hope of like, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do this. And then essentially immediately, nope, you're right back where you started, if not worse. And then just that whole giving up on life, but then still having the mindset of like, this is what's going down. The Demogorgon's coming. I need to start scheming and figure out how we're going to beat this thing. And sure enough, he does it. But yeah, his whole character this season was probably my favorite so far. Like I've liked him in past seasons, but there was just something about his performance this season I like so much more.
It was fun. I really like kind of his character. I feel like is finally going to get redemption for like all the bad things that have happened to him and all the bad, like, I don't know. I was telling Midge too the other day, like, I feel like I am Hopper sometimes with just the bad things happen to everybody, like everybody around me, like I'm not a good person thing. And I just want him and Joyce to ride off into the sunset and eat peanut butter out of a jar and be happy together. That's all I want. So, well, should we wrap things up with final predictions for where we think things go from here?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, while we're talking Russia, though, before we go off on that, what were your thoughts on the guard that, like, essentially helped him? Like, I was kind of indifferent to him, but I honestly feel by the time we get to the end, and he's talking about his kid, and Hopper does that whole kind of monologue talking about how the people around him are, like, he's bad for the people around him or whatever. And even once they got to that point where you see the look on his face when Hopper like holds Joyce, you see like this change and more. It brought a humanity to him that you didn't have the rest of the season, because the rest of the season it was more like, I just want to make some money. I just want to get out of this. I kind of turned the corner on him by the end, and I'm kind of curious to see what they do with him in Volume 2. Something tells me he won't be around, past that. Or at least part of the storyline, but I am curious to see what they do with him and if they have any kind of redemption for him, like the thing with Mikhail, his kid or whatever, and showing that them reunite or something like that. I think that would be kind of cool, just because again that humanity switch kind of flipped on, I feel like, at the end there. And you started to kind of feel for him a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think I had the same experience where I was kind of indifferent to him, and I'm like, this guy, like, this isn't going to pan out. It's too easy. It's too obvious. And I kind of love that they let it pan out with like that really intense escape scene that Hopper goes through, and then Like the riding up the hill on the snowmobile.
Yeah.
I loved it. I don't know why I found that so amusing, but I did. But yeah, I do like that they've kind of flipped that switch on his humanity. And like I mean, they're kind of almost living these parallel lives where they're in this like job of, I mean, essentially police, like, yes, Hopper is police, but like essentially policing, being in charge, being an authority figure, but then having a really difficult kind of home life, and not a great home life with their kid, their, wives, whatever. I don't know, I guess this kind of does take us a little bit into like how things play out in Russia and Hawkins and California, etc. But I'm kind of thinking, like, he joins the team. I think Yuri gets left behind. I think Enzo joins the team. I forget what his real name was. I know we got it at some point towards the end. But yeah, I think we probably lose him because he's an easy character, kind of an easy character to an easy throwaway character, for lack of a better word.
I mean, honestly, at this point, they could shake hands and move on, and we'd be fine with it. But
that too, and just part ways. Yeah, that's very true too. But on that note too, like, I mean, we still have 2 whole episodes. They're not out of Russia. How do they actually get out of this prison? Because they're not free and clear. Like, there's still other guards and staff in there. And they have no plane to get back either. They crashed the plane. So are we walking back to Alaska? Like,
so you didn't get to watch the teaser because you didn't stay. We know that they're definitely still in Russia. I do not think they will leave Russia in season 4.
No.
I think they will remain in Russia through whatever happens. To me, it doesn't seem logical that they would make it back in these next 2 episodes, especially considering where they're at. Plus, if you watch the teaser, there is a lot of stuff that you could see is going on in Russia. They have more Demogorgons essentially locked away there. They have this.
Can't fight anymore.
They have this kind of mysterious black cloud that's just swirling around inside of this thing. So I don't know if that's somehow part of like Mind Flayer or the dust or all that.
Full on lost with this bullshit now? No. If we get to the end and it was just a dream and everybody was really dead on the island, the Duffer Brothers.
You're gonna hunt down the Duffer Brothers.
I'm coming for that.
You're gonna come at him with a roller skate.
Yes. A skate attack, a vicious skate attack.
So
you know what? I might bring my freaking ice skate for that. Actually, just slice noses.
Slicing off noses, and then everyone looks like Vecna. But
oh my god, that's what happened to Vecna.
Yeah, so I honestly don't think that they're getting out of Russia this season. I think Joyce and Murray and Hopper will remain there with whatever else goes down in this season, and we will likely not see them get reunited until the end, the very end, or maybe not till season 5. And again, a lot of it is because all of that imagery shows them still there and still uncovering, new mysteries of Russia, essentially. And like you said, they have no transportation back. I don't think Yuri's magically going to, have some connections to get them back. I don't think they're just going to cut him loose, because I do feel like he could cause some issues for them, based off the fact that he already, tried to turn them in and get his payday. But we'll see. But yeah, my theory is they're going to remain in Russia at least through the end of the season, if not longer.
Yeah, I keep thinking they'll get back to California, because I need Joyce to walk into her home completely destroyed by the U.S. government and be like, what happened here?
Yeah.
So what do you think happens with the crew out of California? Mike, Will, Jonathan, Argyle. Do they find Elle? Do they make it to Nevada?
So here's my theory. I think they make it to Nevada too late. I'm thinking they get there. So another thing you see in the... God, I wish I would have told you. I didn't realize you hadn't seen it.
Did you not see me hate tweet the Stranger Things account the other day and be like, where's our trailer?
Maybe I did. No, actually, no, I did see that. But then that was like right after it aired. So I thought maybe you just hadn't watched it yet. Or you were just being greedy and wanted more. But so I think that they will get to Elle, but too late. And one of the things you see in the teaser is that the little shack Elle is standing in front of it, and it essentially is blowing up. So my hunch is she destroys that, and they all bail and head to Hawkins, where everything's going to go down. And I have this feeling that the California crew is going to figure out where she's at or get to where she's at and miss her and find like everything in shambles and be like, oh my God, what happened? And then continue on to Hawkins. And I think they'll all meet up there. And that's when we'll see kind of mostly everybody together for the end.
I think I agree with that. Oh my God, I just had a thought and it totally went out of my head too. I don't even remember what it was. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. There's one point when Brenner is talking to Elle and he's saying like, this could, like, what we're gonna try to do here, this could go really badly. And it kind of is almost like you could go to the dark side with what we're gonna do if we go too fast. Because he's talking about like we have to go at a certain pace so that we basically don't, like, I think, scramble like your brain more or less with everything, or turn you dark. And so the standing in front of the entrance to the underground bunker kind of supports that to me, of like maybe they went too fast because we saw them jump ahead a little bit to get her to remembering the whole thing with one. And like maybe my guess early on was maybe she goes dark, and that season 5 is trying to like get her back, because I mean Will makes the point of saying too that all these people in this lab, like, they did all this work, but they, in season 2, they weren't the ones who brought me back. It was you guys. Like, essentially it was kind of the Harry Potter line of, it was my mother's love basically that saved me. So I kind of feel like maybe that might be Elle's saving grace, like these people who love her when she's never really experienced that from anybody in her life. But I don't know.
I mean that's interesting. I feel like, I don't know, that would be kind of heartbreaking because she's so scared of being bad. And I think with Owens, like, kind of saying, like, no, I think you're one of the good ones, like, there's this piece to me that hopes that she would hold on to that and stay good. But we'll see. Yeah. Maybe not.
Fingers crossed. We'll see with that. There's so many different directions this could all go. So our last group, the Hawkins crew, what do you think happens there? Half of them are, well, we watched Nancy get sucked back into Vecna's head, essentially, we're assuming, because Max makes the observation that, the red smoky place is not the memory, it is something different, and he was surprised that she made it there, and Nancy is there now. And then Steve also gets attacked by the gargoyle bats, for lack of a better term for them. And Robin makes a big deal about rabies. I'm seeing all the comments fly by about Steve is going to die. We think Steve is it. Twitter is saying Steve. And I can't decide if Steve is going to die, if Steve and Robin are going to die. Not Steve and Robin. Steve and Nancy are going to die. Or if Steve is just a red herring and it's Nancy that dies out of that group. Because I think that's my last question. I think we definitely lose people before the end of the season.
We definitely lose people. I think so.
Ooh, I like that. Thank you.
Demobats, yeah. But no, so I think Hawkins crew, again, damn it, I should have said this to you. We know that at least Robin, Steve, and Nancy do wind up back in the Upside Down, and from what we can tell from the teaser, it looks like they might wind up at Creel House in the Upside Down, like, or some variation.
Eddie's there too, though, because I remember from one of the trailers early on, there's a scene of somebody playing the guitar in the Upside Down. So we haven't seen that, and I assume that's Eddie. So
yeah, so that's Eddie. Eddie and Dustin also wind up back there. You see a scene of the two of them basically like all armored up and ready to go. So at least they, from what I can tell, are going to wind up back in the Upside Down. At least those are the only ones that they've shown. So I think a large chunk of the Hawkins group is going to be spending time in the Upside Down. Now, whether that's pre-11's return, post-11's return, I don't know. Because when you see them, they are all geared up and look different than we left them. So something tells me they leave and come back, or something's going to happen like that. I don't imagine, because this is Vecna's first interaction with Nancy, I can't see him just taking her there. He seems to do it in stages. So I don't think we're going to lose her. I think she'll probably make it back to the real world and then ultimately wind up back there. So, but I think a good chunk of the next 2 episodes is going to be them in the Upside Down in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's because, honestly, in the real world, they've exhausted all of their resources in terms of what more they could do there. And really, they just put themselves in danger, at least from a police and from Jason and his crew of goons. Like, they're in more danger, almost more danger in the real world than they are there. Because at least there, they can hide or hold their own because Vecna's not going to be necessarily going after them directly.
Yeah.
So.
I'm loving seeing all the comments fly by about who people think are going to die. I saw one about...
My comments froze. I can't see anything
they?
anybody's saying.
I think mine did not. So yay. I think Hopper will die probably to save Joyce or Elle. I could see that being very... I mean, Hopper basically already gave his life once for Joyce, so I can very easily see that happening again.
That's almost why I don't think they would, because they already put us through that. I almost feel like they wouldn't. Are we talking who we think is going to die? Are we going there now?
Who do you think is a goner?
I think Steve. I agree with a lot of folks that I think it's Steve. And my reasoning for that is, one, Steve wasn't supposed to last be on season 1 to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, he was originally supposed to be killed off and basically got to stay because people liked him and the chemistry with the characters. That said, what realistically has he done that's of huge value, at least, especially in this season? Like, he really has been the babysitter and a chauffeur. Like, I could see them offing him because of that, because there's no, and losing him, it's gonna have a significant impact on multiple characters. It's gonna gut Robin, it's gonna gut Nancy, it's gonna gut Dustin, even if their bromance has been on the rocks as of late. Like,
did you sigh? I heard you sigh.
So I think, it's going to impact so many people. I could see that one because it's going to hit hard. And he's already kind of gotten beat up when he wound up in the Upside Down with the Demobats. Like, he's already kind of tore up, and, he's still kicking ass now, but
yeah.
I could see. But there's also a part of me that feels like Nancy could go because the process already started. I don't know that anyone's going to be able to pin down her favorite song to save her. Honestly, when have you...
Somebody
like, is it the sound of a typewriter? Like,
when Robin's going through her room, I think at one point does she pull out a CD, or not a CD? Oh God, I just jumped ahead 10 years. Pulls out a cassette of something, I think.
Does she?
Maybe.
I remember the Tom Cruise poster. There's a Tom Cruise poster. There's the ballerina.
There's the ballerina box.
Music
that
box.
Actually looks at in season 1 too. I don't know. I think.
Yeah.
I think Nancy goes. But yeah, I think Steve does too, because he affects a lot of people. I think then there's the opportunity too to make the joke about him losing another fight, because that was the whole thing in season 2. Like, you didn't win the fight.
And I think they need to start offing people. Like, as much as I love all of these characters, the cast has gotten so big, and they're gonna have to start killing off major characters. And who that is, I don't know. There's a part of me that's there's a part of me that was worried too. So again, from the teaser, there's a scene where Lucas is in the real world and looks terrified. There's a part of me that's worried that something happens to him from Jason and his goons. Oh. Whether he dies or not, I don't know that it would be that extreme. Maybe. Jason seems like he's a bit off his rocker now that what's his face died in the lake.
Yeah. Didn't really believe him when he...
But the fact he feels like he was betrayed and double-crossed, like, how far would, these people go? So there's a part of me that was worried about that, because Lucas looks scared in that scene. So
okay. I have to go watch this. Oh, I cannot believe I didn't know that was there. I think that's it. I've seen a lot of people commenting too that they think that Elle definitely goes, and I don't know if that happens before the end of season 4, but I think that's a very real possibility before the end of the series.
I have the feeling
I love all these characters so much. Like, I genuinely love every single one of them, and I don't want any of them to die, but I also would rather... That sounds so horrendous. I'd rather have a really good story. I'd rather watch a really good story than keep everybody safe. And, you kind of have to up the stakes before this last season. Like, they did that last season, and we all lost our freaking minds over Hopper, so...
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I definitely think we lose Elle, and the reason I say that is because the Duffer Brothers have made it clear, like, this is the end of Elle's story arc. Like, there will be more Stranger Things in some way, shape, or form, but this is the end for Elle and the Hawkins crew. And to me, you can't do that unless you kill Elle, because then there's always that opportunity to open up later and be like, oh, well, something weird's happening. Elle, come on. Like, no, like, it's not. I think they have to end her. My hunch is whatever big bad is at the end of season 5, whether that's still Vecna or whatever, it may be something that's puppeting him. I think whatever she goes through, it's ultimately going to be like a dual death. Like, the big bad is dead, and Elle gave everything to
make that happen.
Put it down. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I think my last question for you, now that this Instagram Live is at the same running time as episode 7.
I mean, good.
Will you come back and chat about volume 2 with me when that comes out?
Hell yes, I will. Hell yes.
I can't wait. Well, I think that's it. Anything else to add? Stranger Things. I mean, I feel like we could easily keep going for another hour and a half because there's just so much. But
yeah, I'm trying to see if there was anything else in my notes. No, I think we're good. Oh, the one thing you didn't talk about that I thought you were going to talk about was the Elvira poster. And I realized...
Oh, I skipped right over that in my notes. That's a fun little tidbit. If you didn't notice, there's an Elvira poster in this season.
One of the...
It's in episode 4 when Hopper escapes the prison and he's sitting there eating his little jar of peanut butter, and he's super happy. And I just love this little pop culture moment of Elvira.
Well, and what's kind of cool is that, what's kind of cool about that, and I hadn't thought about it at first, is that's like peak Elvira, because I know 86 is when they had the Elvira Halloween special on MTV, so she was like all the rage. I'm like, the fact that they were able to kind of squeeze that in was like perfect. But
it just, I think I told Andrew this when he and I have been talking about it from like a writer perspective. It is just mind-blowing, and this kind of blew my mind even more when I realized the Duffer Brothers are only 2.5 months older than me. Just the knowledge, the depth of knowledge of the 80s and the appreciation for it. And just like from current events to kind of politics to the pop culture to, I mean, just everything that goes into it. This show is just layered so beautifully. Yeah. And it's just such a beautiful love letter to the 80s, if nothing else. I just love it so much for that.
Well, even, so I was watching, I don't know if you watched Millie Bobby Brown in the Hot Ones episode that she did.
No.
If you're familiar with Hot Ones. So Hot Ones is essentially this web series where celebrities come on and do interviews, but it's while eating hot wings that progressively get hotter. And she talks about the attention to detail because he was asking her about it. It's like, what's it like being there? And she's like, no, like, it's hardcore. Like, they have to go out and get, like, helicopters from the 80s. And if they don't get helicopters from the 80s, they've got to get helicopters that look close enough to that and then paint it like that. And then they were talking about the mall. And, like, she's like, my parents came to the set and were like, oh my God, this is like our world. And she's like, it doesn't mean anything to me because I wasn't around. But like, she said that it's so immersive and so real that the people that lived it and experienced it are like, holy shit. Like, so I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments has been from back in season 2, in Hopper's cabin, the glasses, the juice glasses that he and Elle used, we had those growing up. They're floral and they're brown and they're orange and they have like little orange flowers on them and like it kind of looks like wheat, I guess, but we had those.
That's like, funny.
Oh my God, it just blows my mind.
I'm going to end on this and we'll circle back to music since music is our thing, but I will say, if whatever next major moment doesn't punch me in the gut musically the way that they did at the end of last season with the loss of Hopper and the way that Heroes played at the end of that episode, I cried like a baby when that happened. If they do not punch me in the gut musically with whatever major event is coming up, I'm going to be really disappointed. Not that I want to cry at Stranger Things again, but I kind of want to cry at Stranger Things again.
I mean, how much I have cried over this series is ridiculous, especially the end of season 3, because the end of season 3, I think I've told this story several times now, but I'll tell a brief version of it. But like the end of season 3 hit me in such a different way because with the virus moving. Like I was 3 weeks removed from my mom and dad, like my parents selling my childhood home.
Yeah.
And so like Jonathan walking into his bedroom being like 17 years of my life. And I had literally just done that, but it was 30 years of my life. And and just like the way that played out, and then the Hopper letter, and then that song on top of like it just, oh my God.
That song broke me. I was just like, as soon as like the notes started playing, he started singing, I was like, like I could not keep it together. So if they don't, because music has been such a crucial part of this, if they don't find a way to do that again with any of these major moments, I will be sad. Just not in the same way where I'm crying.
I'm going to be very impressed if he watches this and has gotten this far in it at this point. But that Halloween bro, James, is supposed to visit me that weekend that the next volume comes out.
Ooh.
And I'm like, you need to watch this, because we are dedicating part of the weekend to watching Stranger Things. And now I'm a little bit like, no, maybe we're not. I don't think he needs to see me bawl my fucking eyes out.
You're gonna ugly cry in front of him. You're just like, ah.
Although we've already agreed, like he can maybe post it on Instagram. We'll see how that goes down.
Oh,
but
James,
if you've watched this and you're watching to this point, this is your permission. He's never gonna watch this. But.
No, just do it. Make it a TikTok, and then people can reuse the audio.
Oh my God, it could become a trending sound on Instagram.
The Stranger Things freak crying like.
My 15 minutes of fame finally. Yeah. Oh my God, nobody needs to see that. It's not pretty. It's really not pretty. I'm very snotty when I cry. It is not good. Oh. It is not good at all.
So James, if you're watching, also bring a thick shirt or a second shirt.
Oh my God. Well, on that note.
If she sobs into your shoulder, you're going to need it.
I'll just be like, I'm fine. It's fine. I'm just going to go lay in bed and cry my eyes up for the next 3 hours. It's fine. They killed Hopper again.
I don't think they're going to kill him. I don't think they're going to kill him.
Oh, I mean, I've lived through it once. I could do it again. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
All right.
So, well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for talking about this ad nauseum.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
This was fun.
This has been so much fun.
For sure. Appreciate you having me. And I'll definitely be back.
Yes, I will see you again in July, and we will do this all over again for volume 2.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for joining us, and for so many of you for hanging out this long. That's been awesome. I've loved watching that number be like super consistent the entire time. So thank you if you've hung out with us the entire time and watched. Thank you for all your fantastic comments too. I haven't been able to read them all out loud, but I've been skimming them as they've gone by, and you guys have had some great input too. So thank you.
Yeah.
See you guys in the Upside Down. Bye.
Bye.